George Carlin said, "Think of how stupid the average person is and realize half of them are stupider than that. What real-life examples have you seen that validate this view?" There's a considerable overlap between the intelligence of the smartest bears and the dumbest tourists. Yosemite Park Ranger and why it's hard to design a bear-proof garbage can. I used to work at a somewhat popular tourist attraction that had standard bins and also things to pour waste liquid in. The second was barrels with the word liquid printed on the side as well as a metal funnel on top that went down to a hole maybe a couple of inches wide. Under the funnel out of view was a bucket. Once, when I had to empty the bucket, I found that someone had lifted the metal funnel and placed a bag full of trash in the bucket. I've never quite figured out how someone managed to look at two things right next to each other, one with an opening for rubbish with a bin bag and other rubbish, and one with a narrow funnel and a somewhat full bucket with liquid written on the side and decide that one is the bin they should use. But the hands-down funniest I have seen was a man who struggled with bear-proof storage containers before. I felt embarrassed for him. Me too. I'd feel very embarrassed for the guy. Story 2. I used to work in Banff National Park. One day at the end of the tour, I was driving some guests back to their hotel, and a woman was adamant that Banff was a very dangerous place to visit since we just let wild animals run around everywhere. They should be in cages. I had to fight the urge to throw her off the bus pretty hard. Some other gems that came up in the past include a guest insisting he needed to change money they got in BC to Alberta currency. Not a real thing. Man arrived very irate that the entire Trans-Canada Highway was not lit with proper street lamps every 100 yards. That would be a stunning waste of energy. Not to mention probably cost more than our national budget, and your car has lights on it. More than a few have grossly underestimated the distances involved in a country like Canada. No, you cannot drive from Calgary to Toronto and back on the same day for lunch at the CN Tower. And then there's my stint in the US, where I worked at Yosemite. The tourists are the worst. Oh my god, Yosemite tourists are the worst. I worked at a resort up there for a while before moving to Alberta. My favorite question, and she was sincere and legitimate, was, what time do they turn the waterfalls on and off? I died a little inside. Another time I got a call from one of the rooms that had a sliding door to the lawn and they said there was a pile of crap outside their door. I got my gloves in a bag and went looking. I looked for like a solid 15 minutes before the guest came out and pointed it out. It was a tangerine someone had left on the ground and gone stepped on. It was bright orange. She looked at me in horror as I picked it up without gloves and walked off laughing. Story 3. Man, after baby-proofing my kitchen, getting things out of drawers is hands down the most difficult part of cooking now. The baby still gets into things that are baby-proofed and outsmarts me like it's nothing. I usually have 5 seconds to figure out how to open a baby-proof drawer while cooking, but my baby has all the time in the world. We're running out of places to put things out of his reach. Baby-proof cupboards only slow him down for a minute or so at most. It's all tinned food and stainless steel stuff below the counter height now, stuff he can't break easily. Also, it doesn't help that kids that small have insane levels of neuroplasticity and can and will learn everything and anything they're physically capable of doing faster than an adult can because their brains are set to sponge and multiply mode, while adult brains are set to let's throw out a ton of brain cells because we haven't used them in a hot second. That's just my baby. Now, my toddler is a different story. He figured out how to get on chairs fairly recently, and we had to move a load of stuff. This week, I discovered that he's figured out how to move the chairs before climbing onto them, so a lot of the stuff I'd moved now needs moving further. A couple of times he would move his bathroom stool into the kitchen first thing in the morning and raid the countertop because we left chocolate up there a couple of times. I forgot to close the gate this morning and he went downstairs without my knowledge, looked around and found a protein bar. He brought it to me as I was nursing his brother. "Here, this is for you. I was looking for chocolate and I brought you this. Can I have chocolate now?" So we are in the bargaining phase of development. Story 4. My dad likes to tell the story of how he and his friend once convinced another friend of theirs that he could send the money he owned to yet another friend via fax, which was pretty new back then. So he put them in the fax machine and when the money came out on the other end, they told him it didn't work and to send it again. During the 5th or so attempts, they get a call from said friend asking why they're sending him pictures of banknotes. I have another story. I worked at a bank. A girl comes into my branch and asks whether there was a $40 deposit in her account. I took a look and saw that she used a mobile deposit to deposit a $40 check. She replied, "But I put in that I only wanted to deposit $20 of that check." So I asked what she did with the other $20. She said that she took it to our other bank, deposited $20 and got $20 cash back. She still couldn't wrap her head around why the $20 wasn't deposited into our bank account at my bank. Oh, and another story that happened before that was when mobile depositing had just become a thing. We received a picture of someone's cash for a deposit. Yeah. I hope this dude sent a picture of an ATM back. Story 5. I currently work at a credit union. The average person does not read a vehicle purchase contract before signing. This leads to way too many people contacting me to complain because their loan payments are considerably higher than they thought they would be. Being a good lender, I always review documents to make sure we didn't make a clerical error. In 99.99999% of cases, the payment matches the contract the dealer sent to us. Not hidden, mind you. The information is on the first page of the contract, in bold print, directly under the line that states the amount they are financing and the interest rate. The average human being manages to miss that information, but accepts that they signed a contract without reading it. The below-average human being starts yelling at me because that isn't what they remember agreeing to. They don't remember agreeing to the thing in big print in the first page of the short contract they signed. The most important section of the contract is formatted specifically to make it easy to read and understand. But it's my fault they thought they would have a payment amount that was never a possibility to begin with. I've had people complain because they thought a $30,000 loan with an 84-month term was only going to cost $250 per month. And the really below-average human being threatens to sue over the not agreed-upon payment amount. Story 6. When my daughter was born, we had to see the hospital pediatrician before we could switch to our usual one. We're in a tiny exam room and he's going over the do's and don'ts for the new parents. To precede this, he's an older southern man. And I assume she'll be sleeping in a crib in the nursery? We have a bassinet set up beside the bed to make night feeding easier. She can't sleep with you. She won't be in the bed, she has a bassinet beside the bed. If she sleeps in the same room, there will be too much carbon dioxide and she'll suffocate. That's what causes SIDS. Then isn't this exam room unsafe? We put in a complaint with the practice in the hospital. That's some ridiculously incorrect information to be spouting off at people, especially parents who take everything a doctor says as gospel. I can't even find the logic in that. Not only this, but also co-sleeping in the same room is shown to reduce the incidence of SIDS. It is thought that the baby hears your breathing and it helps them self-regulate. The closer they are, the more they regulate. It is theorized that kangaroo care helps NICU babies. Story 7. I'm an insurance claim adjuster. If you truly knew how many stupid drivers you're sharing the road with, you'd never drive again. One time I had to explain positive equity to a 40-year-old man and his wife. I explained the concept to them 4 times in just one phone call, and each time they would repeat it back to me wrong. Finally, the wife got so frustrated that she yelled, $10,000 is not enough to buy a brand new car. To which I replied, yes, but you did not have enough money to purchase said car brand new in the first place, which is why you took out the loan. You paid the loan and now the remainder of your settlement is $10,000. It was them, not me. I've given the same speech for years and years, and these people were the only ones who truly did not get it. These people weren't playing dumb to get more stuff either. They own a business too. I just hope that they hired someone to do their bookkeeping. Another time I had the pleasure of explaining what too fast for conditions meant. How fast were you going? I was going the speed limit, so 30. Okay. Unfortunately, sliding off the road and hitting several parked cars will be an at-fault incident. You were going too fast for the conditions. But I was going the speed limit. How do you know I was going too fast for the conditions? Because you hit other cars as a result of losing control in the snow. I'd like to speak to your manager. You're wrong. Story 8. I worked at Little Caesars and we were proofing the dough for pizza. My boss said at 7 p.m. that the dough needed to rise for 12 hours and took out her calculator to do the math. So I said, that's going to be 7 a.m. And she said the dough would expire in 48 hours and started doing the math again. I told her it would expire 2 days from now and she said, that's kind of weird how that works out, huh? One time I took a lunch break and I came back 5 minutes late. My boss pointed out that I was back 5 minutes late, so I said, oh yeah, that's because I left for lunch 5 minutes early. I was just being a smart aleck, but she shrugs and says, okay then, and walks away. Her friend is standing there with his jaw dropped like, holy crap, how the hell did that work? I quit shortly after that. It sounds like she didn't know how to tell time. I'm surprised she knew how to use the calculator. Man, I'm getting both a headache and my sides are aching from laughing at these stories. If you want to keep watching videos like these, simply hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. Story 9. I was a high school science teacher. In one of my chemistry, mainly 11th grade classes, we reviewed for the test beforehand. The review is every question on the test, which I numbered and wrote in full detail on the chalk and whiteboards. I did not erase before or after I handed out the test. I left the answers and worked on the boards for the entirety of the period. One kid figured it out. He looked at me, then at the board, then down at the paper, then back at me in bewilderment. I nodded slightly and he began copying. Even after grading everything, it was clear he was the only one who realized. Also, around Christmas Eve, I read "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" while they were taking a quiz. The same kid was the only one who realized I was saying the answer, number 8 is B, after every other line in the poem. Story 10. On I-90 in Ohio, they have these electric eye things that get triggered if a deer walks through them, and it makes a big animal detector sign light up. It's an advanced warning thing so you can know that Bambi is about to end it all by leaping in front of the family minivan. And my wife is very intelligent, graduated medical school, and very quick-witted. But it had been a long, exhausting day of traveling when we had this conversation. Her. How does that work? Me. Well, if an animal trips the beam, it lights up. Her. But how do they know? Me. Know what? Her. That it's an animal. Me. As opposed to her. A person. How do they know it's an animal and not a person? Me. I guess it could be a person too. Her. Then why isn't it going off all the time? Me. Because there aren't any animals or people? Her. Frustrated. It didn't light up when we drove past it. Me. Wait, it's for animals alongside the road, not inside the car. Her. Oh! And we had a good laugh about that. She thought for a moment that it was scanning the car to report whether we had an animal with us or something. As I said, it's been a long day. Story 11. In the 80s, A&W attempted to compete with McDonald's quarter-pounder burger by selling a third-pounder for the same price. The operation failed tremendously, with virtually no one buying the burger. When they surveyed the customers for an explanation, the majority of customers responded that they didn't want to pay the same price for less meat. The customers genuinely believed that one-third was less than one-fourth and refused to try the new A&W burger because of it. When it's food-related, it's simple. Just divide the numerator by the denominator. Story 12. I have 2 stories. There was a kid who drank bleach to prove it wouldn't end you. A week later, he showed up at school after taking a shot. He said he proved his point when the teacher asked why he was bragging about it. Mr. Hawk just said, "But you cannot argue that without the medical treatment you'd have gone into big trouble, though. You even said you have stomach damage yourself." This kid was bragging about that. He was not mentally disabled or otherwise, he was just that kind of idiot. Then there was this girl who wanted to breathe fire. She put lighter fluid in her mouth, and instead of blowing it onto a flame, she lit it on fire inside her mouth and then tried to blow it out. She came to school the next day with a bandage over her face. In hindsight, I think these 2 people would make a great couple. Story 13. A former coworker was talking about how she wanted to go back to school to get her master's degree because she only had a bachelorette degree and wanted more job opportunities. I said, "Do you mean a bachelor's degree?" She insisted that it was pronounced bachelorette when it was given to a woman. Then she led me back to her office and pointed at her diploma to the word baccalaureate and said, "See? Bachelorette." The same coworker also smokes. One time I asked her what brand she uses and she told me she smokes American Spirits because, in her words, "You can't get hooked on these, see?" And she showed me the box. Oh, honey, no, that says no additives. Such a sweet, stupid girl. Story 14. One day, my roommate and I were hammered and discussing that if the supermarket were feudal land and we were to divide it up into various fiefdoms, we would agree that I would claim meat as my kingdom and he would claim dairy. We then got into an argument as to whether eggs were dairy or meat. He claimed that they were dairy since they were located near the milk in the dairy section. I claimed that this placement was only due to refrigerator needs and that they belonged to my domain, meat, because they were a meatish protein that would one day become a bird. In the end, we decided that the fertilization status would determine who was right. If fertilized, use meat, if not, dairy. This was before the internet, so I had to find a book or ask somebody. For some odd reason, my roommate decided to call Stephanie. She was dumb as a post, but she grew up in a rural area and would probably know. My roommate calls and I hear Stephanie answer in her light, airy voice. "Hello?" "Hi, Stephanie. Filthy Waffles and I are having an argument. We hope you can settle. You know the eggs you buy in the store?" "Yeah, I think. Are they fertilized?" After a long, confused pause, Stephanie finally answered. "What do you mean? Eggs aren't plants." Wow, did that just happen? Story 15. I used to work in travel and the number of people who did not understand the following was staggering. You cannot take a 3 to 7 round-trip night cruise from Miami to Australia. You know, your friend did not just book this. No, there are, in fact, no ocean-bound cruises leaving from Arizona. You cannot take a cruise from Miami to Hawaii and back in 7 to 10 days. No, the airport is closed due to a hurricane, flood, or ice, and you cannot demand a flight in a different carrier out of the same airport in the next hour. Also, no, you did not just see someone book this. Yes, it is a shorter flight for your friends from the east coast of the US to the Caribbean than for you in Europe, and no, nobody can change that. Yes, I will need your DD-214 to confirm a military rate. No, your word was in a covert unit will not suffice, and no, I am not disrespecting the military because I cannot simply take your word for it. Yes, if a passport or visa or travel vaccination is needed for you to travel, you will need it, and no manager can override this as it is a government requirement. I've been doing this for 6 years, and your friends, neighbors, hairdressers, roommates, cousins, mailman does not know more about this than I do. Story 16. When I was a sophomore in high school, a classmate asked to borrow a pen, and I lent him one of mine that had the Eiffel Tower on it. He asked where the building was from, and I said Paris. He gave me a confused look and asked where Paris was. Was it further away than Chicago? Now it was my turn to be confused. We were in high school. How the hell did he not know Paris was in France? But whatever, maybe he's not the brightest. So I informed him that Paris is in France. But he still looks utterly confused. I assume he misheard me, so I started explaining it. France, you know, like France? From history class, World War II, Napoleon, that France. He said he was bad at history and had never heard of France before. Then asked me if it was another state or if it was like a region of our state. Utterly baffled at this point, I tried to explain that it was another country entirely, and it was in Europe. Exasperated, I remember saying, "You know, Europe? That other continent?" He still looked confused, so I added, "The land across the sea." Finally, there was recognition on his face. He tells me he heard of oceans before. He thinks he understands now. I remind you that this encounter with a student who didn't know what Europe was took place in high school. Story 17. My ex had a student, one who occasionally misspelled his name, turn in a very well-written essay that just so happened to be clearly printed off the internet, including the URL at the bottom. He gave the kid a 0. The kid's grandmother came into the office completely distraught because she knows her grandson had written that essay. Her proof? He said he wrote it. When it was shown to her on the internet, she insisted that he must have written it and put it on that website himself. Thank goodness the principal was a good one and let her know that she didn't buy that for a minute. Also, when I was a teller, I asked a man for ID. He showed me his personalized belt buckle. When I said that wasn't enough, he offered to go get his sister from the car so she could tell me who he was. He didn't understand why neither of those would work. Who else would wear a belt buckle with my name on it? Why would my sister lie to you? She doesn't want any money. Story 18. A man I worked with, 23 to 25 years old, was absolutely positive that the TechRex video where he drills a hole in an iPhone 7 or 8, whichever was the first without a 3.5mm jack, to make the headphone jack was 100% real. And they did it to hide it from customers, and this was a hack to find it. I'm a techie. I built another person's computer, and he argued with me for 25 to 45 minutes about this. I pulled up diagrams, explained he was drilling into the battery, and even named TechRex when he couldn't name the video maker. He saw it on Instagram. And I knew his entire channel was ruining tech. I showed him, and it told him if he could do it, I'd pay for the iPhone in full if it works. And he was literally shopping around for it when another one of my coworkers was watching this argument and siding with this man despite him knowing I'm a techie and trusting me to build his $2,000 PC said, "Oh, my brother just got that phone." They called him and he said, "Nah, that's fake." And that was it. They believed him. I showed them schematics and breakdowns of the phone and that wasn't enough, but nah, it's fake. Was. This man also had to get a ride home when his car steering wheel wouldn't move because it was locked as most cars do, and he played with it for an hour and was unable to unlock his wheel. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you made it this far, I'm sure you'll also enjoy. What's your "this person is on another level of stupid" story? Story 4 is just crazy. See you in that video.